today's topic is academic writing. Now, don't worry, I will not be teaching you how to write English, but rather I will be telling you some tips to channel your English, whatever you have learned, to write a better article, to write a publication, and what are the general conventions which the usual scientific community wants from you. So, here is the outline of this seminar. First, I'll be talking about what is academic writing in general, and we will discuss some uh, few points or what are the rules of writing and what are different types of academic documents that you can prepare at a level which you are in. Then we will look at the rules and conventions of writing in detail. After that, because most of the participants are from a technical institute, I thought that some content on writing mathematics, especially equations in publications, is very, very important because many people, although they know how to write equations, they get confused as to how to merge them with the sentences that we write in English. So we will be covering that in the third part. And finally, I'll be talking about how to write bibliography and how to cite the references which we have used in a publication. So let us first look at the process of publication. So if you want to publish certain material, suppose you want to publish a research article, then what all steps do you have to go through to do so? First of all, you need to know the topic in which you want to make a publication. Then you need to research on that topic. And after your research is complete, and once you have a satisfaction that, okay, whatever results I have produced are good enough, then you need to start planning on what you will write about them. And once you complete your plan, that plan is usually done on a rough paper. And after that, you have to typeset it in a LaTeX document, or many journals still use Word document as well. So that part, the writing part, we are going to focus on today. After writing, then comes the part of reviewing and editing whatever you have written. And while reviewing, you have to ask a very important question to yourself: that is whatever you have written really satisfactory, and is it error free? Now, there are two types of errors which you can have in a publication. The first type of error is uh, error in the very result which you want to publish. So if there is error in the result in which you want to publish, then there is nothing you can do. You have to stop the publication process itself. You have to again research the topic. You have to get some better results and then again write the article. But if there is no error in your results, if there is no error in the theory, then you have to ask yourself that whether whatever I have written is error free grammatically, and is it consistent with the rules and conventions that the scientific community follows. If the answer is yes, then you can very well proceed to submit. You can search a suitable journal for your publication and then follow the guidelines given by that journal page. And finally, you can press the submit button. If the answer is no to this question, then you have to review it again. And believe me, it takes at least 3 reviews to get the answer as yes. And it is always better that some person other than you or the people who have been working on this reviews it at least once. So you can ask a very trustworthy friend of yours who will not steal your idea, and you can ask him or her that please review this document and please tell me if there are any grammatical errors or not. So let us now begin. So there are various types of academic documents which you can prepare, especially at a level which we all are currently in, and they are as follows. The first one is an academic essay. Now, most of the institutes in India don't have this thing in the curriculum, but if you see universities in the UK or the US or even in some European countries, then they usually ask you to write an essay on a topic in which you have to produce your own research, and at the end of that essay you have to give your own thoughts about what you have learned from that topic and how you can further approach that topic. So because we don't usually deal it with in India, I'll not be talking much about it. The second and third one is something which all of you must be eager to do: a research paper and a thesis. A thesis is compulsory for everyone now, especially in SUNIT, and research paper is always better, as in the previous seminars Archie and Naman have already told that if you have a publication, it is always good to be written in the CV. Then comes a research proposal. This one usually occurs when you are in a PhD stage. Once you have decided the project which you want to work on, then you have to prepare a draft of how you will do the research, what that project will bring to the society, and then you have to submit it to the administration. The administration then reviews it, finds out if it is really worth funding, and then you get the funding from the whatever institute you are in. So that is about research proposal. And finally, literature review. Now, after doing a literature review, there are two things which you can do. Either you can write a survey article on it, or you can include it in your thesis. Now, a survey article is a bit different from a research paper or a research article in a way that survey article does not really have anything new. It only has a survey of whatever has been done till date in the field of your interest. While a research paper usually has your own research, your own results, which are a bit new from whatever has been done till date. So, right, this is all about academic documents, and I am certain that all of you will definitely write a research paper in the coming years. Now, there are various types of academic writing. The the four major types are descriptive, analytical, persuasive, and critical. Now, the academic essays come usually in the first type. They are descriptive. The academic essays usually revolve around a certain topic, and then you have to give your own thoughts about that. While the second and third combined give us the idea of research papers and thesis. So a research paper and a thesis is completely analytical. You have to analyze each and everything which you say, each and everything which you have read, and then you have to write it. And you have to persuade as to why your method, your results are really good for the scientific community and how other fields can use them. The fourth type of academic writing is a critical academic writing, wherein usually you take some idea from some other author and then you critically analyze it, and uh, either you talk towards it or against it, depending on your ideas. But while writing a critical document, you have to remember that you don't have to hurt someone's feelings. You cannot really write that, no, this is wrong and whatever I'm saying is right. You have to handle it diplomatically. You have to handle it in such a way that both the articles, uh, I mean, nobody's ego should be hurt. That is what you have to keep in mind. Now, the basic characteristics of academic writing are as follows. First of all, any academic document should be clear and concise. It should not be beating around the bush. Whatever you have to tell, you have to clearly state it. And you have to justify it as well. You cannot just say that I believe so and so because I believe it. Nobody is going to believe you. You are not God. And the second thing is that because an academic document usually contains two or more sections, the structure of the section should be logical, and while reading, the reader should get a linear flow. It should not happen that after reading section 2, the section 3 is completely disconnected, and then section 4 is connected to section 2, section 6 is connected to section 3. That way, the reader gets bored and eventually scraps off your document altogether. Then the third thing which you must remember is that whatever argument you make, there must be some evidence behind it. You cannot just say that it is my intuition that so and so things happen and therefore I am going to publish this. If especially if you work in some theoretical field such as mathematics or theoretical physics, then you cannot really perform experiments, and then you have to prove each and everything using a logical method. So I suppose those already in the mathematics field know how to write very nice proofs, and that is what I want to mention here. The fourth characteristic of any academic document is that it is impersonal. So although you are the sole author of any paper, you cannot really claim that the article is completely yours. The article is of the entire community, even though you have written it. So whenever we write that we have done so and so, we don't use I have done so and so. We say that we have done so and so thing. Now, the common mistakes that one does while writing an academic document is that just to make the document look big, we write too many words. So, for example, if I want to say this first point, which is a common mistake is to write too wordy, I could have written that writing too long sentences and unnecessary words. But you see what I did there? There are so many words, and I could make it short into two words, which I have written as two wordy. The second thing which many people do is that they make vague claims. Now, I don't really have any example for this, but while writing, you ask yourself, whatever I am writing, is it vague or is it precise? If you get the answer as no, it is not precise, then you have to restate the statement. The third thing which many people do is use informal language and usually write in the second person's perspective. For example, suppose that there is some theorem 2.1 which is going to give us another result which you don't want to really prove. So instead of writing that you can see the following result, we usually write one can see the following result, and the document converts from informal to formal. Then we should not describe anything without doing its complete analysis. We should also keep in mind that whatever we are going to write is going to be reviewed by one of the experts in the field, and therefore if there is no analysis, the expert is not going to accept your publication. And the most grave mistake which many of us do is that we don't cite the sources from which we are taking ideas. So there are two things which I have come across during my final semester about people not citing the sources. One question which usually everyone has is that after citing the source, they think that their work will no longer be useful, because many a times happens that if you take some source, then you use the methods you used in that particular publication, and using that methods you solve your own problem. So many people ask that should we cite that particular publication or not? So of course you should cite it, because the method which you are using you have obtained from that publication, and it would be unfair on the part of that author if he or she is not being cited. The second thing for not citing the sources is that people say I did not get how to cite them. So it is very easy to learn how to cite sources. You just go to Google Scholar and you type whatever publication you want to cite, and then it will give an option of citation. It will give us two inverted commas below that publication. If you click on it, then you will know how to cite it. It will in fact give you a complete description. It will give you a complete what you can say style in which you can cite. That we will of course discuss in the end. Now, the general rules and conventions of writing. Writing means academic writing, of course. So first of all, uh, in basic English, while we were learning English, we learned that the start of every sentence must be capitalized. And we took it a level further when we capitalized every word, the start of every word. Yes, everyone does it, right? While writing headings, you always capitalize each and every word. Yes, that is also correct. But there are basically three significant styles of capitalizations for titles and headings. The three are as follows. The first thing you can do is you can capitalize all significant words. So for example, this one is a seminar on academic writing. So the significant words are seminar, academic, and writing. So I have capitalized them. But on is not a significant word. So I have not capitalized O. The second thing which you can do is what you have learned in basic English, that always capitalize the first word and everything that follows is not capitalized. And the third style is that depending on the hierarchy, whether you are writing the title of a chapter, a section, a subsection, or a sub-subsection, you can change the style. So usually what many people do is they keep all caps in chapter, then only first word capitalized in the section, and in the subsections, uh, the second thing follows, that only the first word is capitalized. Now, what are the rules for capitalization? Of course, as I previously said, that always capitalize the first word of any sentence, even if the sentence starts after an equation. So later on, we will discuss that equations as well are parts of whatever sentence you are writing. So you should not forget that if you are writing an equation and the sentence ends there, then whatever you have to write after that equation, you have to capitalize the first word. Then the second thing which all of us have learned is that we need to capitalize proper nouns. If there is a name of a scientist, some mathematician, then you need to capitalize the name of that particular person. And The third thing, which maybe many people don't know, or even if they know, they make a common mistake, is that they also capitalize the names of theories, equations, and other mathematical objects. So, suppose the examples which I have written, that Einstein's theory of relativity. Many people, what they do is they capitalize T and R as well. Well, there is nothing wrong as long as you are writing this in a heading. But if it is inside a sentence, then only E should be capitalized because Einstein is a proper noun. It is the name of a person. While theory and relativity, they are not proper nouns and therefore they did not be capitalized. So just like that, there is Newton's law of cooling, then Banach contraction principle. Even here, this contraction, although it is a class of mathematical objects, it is not considered as a proper noun and therefore the C is not capitalized. Now, the most daunting task in writing an academic document is how to write numbers, because many times we feel that we should write words in place of numbers, and many times we feel that we should write digits in place of numbers. And that is very natural, because throughout our education, we have seen different instances where numbers are represented by digits and where numbers are represented by words. So the general rule of writing numbers is that if the number ranges from 0 through 9, then you should use words. And if the number ranges from 10 onwards, then you should use the digits, that is the numerals. So this is a particular example. So this is the first event. The number associated with first is 1, which is between 0 and 9. So I have to write the word FIRST, organized by Scosh, and there are over 100 participants. So I do not write HUNDRED. I write the numeral 100 to denote 100. However, there are certain exceptions for this rule. The first exception is that if you are stating measurements, then we have to use numerals only, even if the numbers range from 0 through 9. So suppose I want to say that my mobile is of 7 inches, then I write it as the screen is of the numeral 7 and then the unit in which I am measuring, that is inches. And the second exception is that if we have to state a number at the start of a sentence, then we always use words and not numbers, except when we have to state a year. So if I have to say that out of 100 people who attended an SSB interview at suppose AFSB Gandhinagar, only 20 were selected. So I write the word 20 in the beginning of the sentence, and then 100 is written as a numeral in the middle of the sentence. And if I need to say that the year 2020 has got new challenges, I simply write 2020, which everybody understands that it is the year 2020 has got new challenges. How to write percentages? So I don't think many people will have problem here, because all textbooks, all the publications use the following convention of writing followed by the sign of percentage. So this is what you need to remember. But at the start of sentence, we do use words. So in the second example, where I have written that 80% of the students in this institute get placed, so I have not used 80 and the sign of percentage. I have written it in words. Right. Now, most of us, because we are in a institute and we are more inclined towards numerical solutions of many things, we usually have to report our findings. That is, we have to report our data. Now, what many people do is, just because a computing software such as MATLAB gives us output in 17 digits, many people write the whole 17-digit number in their thesis or research paper, whatever. But that is not a correct way. The major problem in doing so is that, once you 17-digit of the mood of reading the whole thesis or the paper is killed off. So it is better to write the significant digits up to where we can see a change, instead of writing all the digits which you have got. And if you are a statistics person, if you are reporting a statistical data, then you should report it up to 3 decimal places. Or if there is some change in the statistical data, then up to significant digits, whatever the change is significant. So suppose the significant change is in the fifth decimal place, then report it up to fifth decimal. And just remember that don't use commas to separate data. Instead, use tables. So even if a table has only one column, it is all right. But always use tables to report data because it is easier to read tables when we are reading numbers. And it is not easy to read numbers separated by comma in a complete sentence. Now, the other thing which you have to keep in mind is the use of abbreviations, acronyms, and contractions. So there is a difference between these three words. Basically, contractions are something like I will is contracted to I apostrophe ILL, or let us is contracted to let apostrophe s. This is called contractions. Abbreviations and acronyms are what we call as them as short forms of something. So in an academic document, we never use contractions. You always write the full sentence with the complete words which you have to use. So if I have to state a function from one set to another, I always write, let us consider f from x to y as a function. And we do not write let apostrophe s so and so. Similarly, if you are using the short form of something, then first you have to introduce it along with its long form. And then throughout the text, you either have to use the short form consistently or the long form consistently. Don't use short form somewhere and long form the other time. So the following is the example. Suppose I want to make Banach contraction principle short because it has too many letters to type. Then I first introduce that from now, I will be referring to Banach contraction principle as BCP. And whenever I want to refer it, I will just write BCP instead of the whole thing. Then while using these abbreviations and acronyms, we never use an apostrophe to denote its plural. So just remember that whenever you use an apostrophe, it means that you are saying that whatever follows belongs to the particular acronym. While without using a apostrophe, if you use S, then there are too many of that particular thing. So for example, if I have to say there are 4 T and T's in the box, then I don't say that there are 4 T and T apostrophe S in the box, but rather I would say that there are 4 T and T S in the box without an apostrophe. And whatever the abbreviations of Latin phrases, we have to punctuate them with appropriate period, which means the dot and the commas. So what are the Latin abbreviations which we use commonly? So these are the 4 which all of us use at some point, even when we write our answer papers. So the first one is the E dot G dot. In Latin, the expression is exempli gratia, which means for example, and of course it is used to give examples. Now, it is to be noted that when we use E dot G dot, it is usually used inside parentheses. It is not used in a sentence, inside a sentence. So if you want to give examples inside a sentence, we usually use such as or like. That is how you, that is what the convention is. The second abbreviation which we use is I dot E dot. In Latin, the expression is ides, and the English meaning of that particular expression is that is. And it is used to clarify what we have already stated or simply restate the previous statement in other words. And this can be used inside parentheses or outside parentheses. That depends on the situation in which you are. The third abbreviation which we all use is etc, and it means etc. And it is usually used at the end of a list in where you want to indicate that there are more objects which you have not stated, but it is very obvious what objects there are there in the list. And finally, the fourth abbreviation which we all usually read in research papers and thesis is the et al. Now, et al, this et is not an abbreviation. It is a complete Latin word et, and al is the abbreviation of alia. So et al means and other people, and it is also usually used after the first author when there are 3 or more authors. If there are 2 authors, then you can just name them by separating them with an and. If there is one author, then there is, of course, no need to write anything after it. Now, what all things should we avoid while writing our academic document? First of all, as I have already mentioned, that using informal language is common mistake, therefore it should be avoided. Using unsophisticated language is also a mistake, and therefore it should be avoided. Now, what is unsophisticated language means? Suppose you don't like somebody's result, then you don't really write it in your academic document that this particular result is bad. Instead, you write that whatever result you have given has enhanced the particular field. That is how you keep your point and also your sophistication. Then you avoid vague expressions, exaggerations. You must remember that you should not use superlative while writing an academic document. And you should not use a subjective language like the result is very beautiful. Now it really depends on who is looking at it. Suppose the result is from mathematics, then it may be beautiful for me, but it may not be beautiful for Archie because she is from chemistry. And you should not use redundant words while writing a sentence. You should not use redundant sentences as well. If you have mentioned somewhere one particular thing, then you should not again mention it in some other section because the section has changed. The reader has gone through that particular section and therefore knows what you have written. And you should not, just to flaunt your vocabulary, use very difficult words in an incorrect way. That is something which we do even unconsciously. Just because we know a word, we think that it will be good to place it in front of a particular sentence. But after placing in that sentence, changes. And it especially happens while writing mathematical documents. Because when we write mathematics, there are two things which we are playing with. One is English and the other is mathematics. So if you combine them both, and if you think that the rules of English also work for the other subject, that is not going to work. Now, what are the common informal expressions and how to replace them is follows. Suppose that the informal expression which you want to replace is a bit or kind of or sort of, then you can write it somewhat or you can specify the degree to which that particular thing happens. And similarly, if you want to replace a lot of or a couple of, you can use many and several. And this is, of course, not an exhaustive list. And if you are thinking that these two things actually mean the same, yes, of course, they mean the same. But the point is that the things mentioned in the second column are more formal when we read something, while those mentioned in the first column are not. Now, the unsophisticated expressions are bad, big, to get, to give, good, and to show. Now, the last expression uh, occurs especially in many textbooks. For example, there are many textbooks which will tell you that figure so and so shows something. But instead of that, you should write that figure so and so illustrates something, or figure so and so is used to demonstrate the particular idea. Now, the other things which we should avoid are jargons, cliches, slangs, and gender biased language. Now, the first three can be easily avoided because once you keep in mind that I don't have to use slangs and all the things, then you will not use it. But gender biased language is something very difficult to avoid. Usually, when we want to refer to the reader, we always assume that the reader will be a male. We always write that he or she will read it, or he will read it, or if you are a feminist, you will write it that she will read it. But the better way to write is they and their. So, because you don't know who will be reading your publication, if you have to give reference to the reader itself, then you usually write they. Now, coming to writing mathematics. So, there are some basic rules while writing equations and symbols and numbers. And we have already seen how to write numbers. So, this particular section will deal with how to write equations and symbols. So, first of all, notice that even though we are writing equations, we have to write them in complete sentences. You just cannot give equations and assume that the reader will understand what the conclusion is. So a very common mistake which you all do, especially in our answer papers, is suppose that you have to solve one particular system of equations, and at the end of that solution, if you have a solution, then there is one particular conclusion. If you don't have a solution, then that conclusion does not hold. So many of us in our answer sheets write that no solution, conclusion false. So of course the examiner knows that what the question was asked, and therefore will give you the complete marks for that solution. But if this same thing is written in a publication, then it is a very bad impact on how you are as a researcher. You have to write that because there are no solutions to the given system of equations, the conclusion does not hold. The complete sentence must be written at the end of whatever computation you are doing. And because I have already mentioned that equations are also a part of sentence, we have to use proper punctuation with equations. So if, wherever there is an need for comma, you have to use comma after an equation. Wherever the sentence ends at an equation, you have to use full stop after the equation. And yeah, we will come to it later. Then we always use symbols in mathematics to simplify the writing. And while using these symbols, we need to remember that the reader must be informed of what symbols we are using. So there should not be two or more concepts having the same symbol. We cannot use the same small x for two or more things. And the last thing which we have to remember is that whatever assertions we make throughout our mathematical document must be justified by proper logical reasoning. Now, how to use symbols? So first of all, be sure to define each and every symbol before you use it. So suppose you want to denote by small f function, then you first say that let f be a function. Then you use f everywhere. You can ignore this rule when the symbol is well known. Suppose you want to use the Euler number E or the ratio of circumference by diameter pi. So in that case, you can ignore this particular rule, and you can simply state that pi is equal to 3.14 or e to the power 2 pi I is equal to 1. That is all right. But if the same well-known expression or the well-known symbol has two or more meanings, then you have to define it before. For example, in mathematics, we usually denote the projection maps by the letter pi. Although it is a capital letter, just to avoid confusion, you have to first mention that from now on, whenever I write the letter capital pi, I will be denoting the projection map. The second thing which we do not do, I don't know for what reason, is that we don't write these symbols and variables in the math mode. So what is the math mode? If you are a LaTeX user, then it is given by either $2 or $4, or so $4 means $4 sign, not actually $4. You don't have to pay for it, or by the what you say, the environment of equations, alignment, etc. If you are a Microsoft user, Microsoft Word user, then there is a option of inserting equations. That particular option is the math mode for Microsoft Office. So whenever you are writing mathematics, you need to keep in mind that your symbols, variables, expressions, equations, etc. must be written in the math mode. What happens is, if you don't write them in the math mode, the variables are not italicized, and therefore it is very clear that if you write a capital A without the math mode, then it is the article A of English. But if you write inside the math mode, then people will understand that, okay, it is a symbol, it is a variable of some particular theory you are going to use it. The third common mistake which we all do is the use of this implication sign that is given by an arrow in place of the equals to sign. So notice that implication sign is used to denote if so and so happens, then the other thing also happens. While the equal to sign means that the left hand side and the right hand side are exactly the same. They have the same value as a mathematical object. Now, we also have a tendency of writing equal to sign inside sentences. So many people write something like this: the number of students in semester 9 equal to 30. Now everybody knows what this sentence means. This sentence wants to convey that the total number of students which have enrolled in semester 9 are 30. But what it looks like, first of all, if you look at it as an uh, English grammar thing, then the sentence is incomplete. It is not even complete, because this 9 equal to 30 itself means that the value of 9 and the value of 30 are same, while the sentence before writing 9 equal to 30 has no connection with that particular thing. So always avoid writing equal to sign inside sentences. And always remember that if you have to start a sentence, you do not start it with a symbol. So we never write that capital X is a set. We write let capital X be a set. And And the last thing which I have learned while writing my book is that we should not overuse the symbols for quantifiers, the for all and there exists quantifier, and the logical connectives and or and negation. The it is not wrong to use them, but the problem is that the reader is used to reading English. If you keep on bombarding your symbols on them, then the reader will lose their interest, and eventually your book or the research paper will not be read. So it is better to write the complete sentence instead of writing these logical connectives and quantifiers. So, all right, I should have mentioned one example, but I completely forgot, so pardon me. Right, now writing equations. How to write equations in a academic document, and what are the options of writing them. So basically there are three options. One is the inline equation, the second is display equation, and the third one is a multi-line equation. Now it is obvious that if one particular equation does not fit in a single line, then you write it in the display mode. But what is the difference between inline and the display mode? So we say that a particular equation is inline if it is within a sentence, and we say that it is in the display mode if it is out of that sentence in the next line, usually displayed in the center of the page. So if you are a LaTeX person, then you already know what these things are. But if you use Microsoft Office, then these two things are usually not as an option of writing equations. You have to manually change it. So the different rules of writing equations are the following. First of all, we also consider the display mode and multi-line equations as parts of sentences, as I have previously mentioned. And therefore, we have to use the punctuation at the end of display mode equations and the multi-line equations. Now, if you have to write several equations, suppose you have to write a system of equations, then we do not use the display mode. Then we have to use the multi-line mode and align all those equations at the end of the line. Usually what people do is, suppose you have three equations which are very short. Suppose you want to write x plus y is equal to 0, x plus z is equal to 0, and y plus z equal to 0. So these three equations won't take much of space of the page. So usually people do x plus y equal to 0 at the left hand side, y plus z equal to 0 in the center of the page, and x plus z equal to 0 on the right hand side. But that does not really look good. It first of all does not give us the feeling that it is a system of equations. It gives us the feeling that okay, there are three equations, the author wanted to just state them and therefore he has stated them in this way. So always notice that inside the display mode, you only write one particular equation. After that equation, if you have to write more equations or sentences, then you either put a comma or a full stop. Now, after a multi-line equation is complete, we usually avoid writing commas because already a multi-line equation is long enough for a person to get exhausted. So we complete the sentence at the end of a multi-line equation, and then we begin a new sentence after it. Now, how to number these equations and how to reference them within the document. So first of all, nowadays even Microsoft Office has this automatic numbering system. If you go to the section of referencing, then you can just select an equation, click on the button for referencing, and then you can have an automatic number which as per uh, you are inserting equations one by one. So numbering is not really a problem. That is what the computer does for you. But referencing sometimes becomes a problem. And for those who like to number their equations on their own, the following are the points that need to be remembered. So first of all, that not all the equations which you have written should be numbered. So suppose that you are writing a very big thesis, then there would be approximately 100 equations. So there is no sense of numbering all of them. Instead, only number those equations which are important or will be used somewhere else. So while numbering them, the hierarchy should be kept in mind. Usually in a research paper or a thesis, we have the following hierarchy. So first of all comes the chapter number, then comes the section number, and then the equation number. Or if you want to omit the section number, it is all right. But because there are no chapters in a research paper or article, then there is no chapter number, there is the section number and then the equation number. Then we never use the subsection number to denote equations. We never write chapter, section, subsection, and then equation number. And we also should know that if we have, suppose, number 10 equations in a particular section, then not all those 10 equations should be referenced somewhere. Sometimes you number them just because you want to emphasize that, okay, this particular equation is really, really important and the reader should remember it. And while referencing these equations, the word equation must be written in full, EQATION, not EQ dot, not EQN, nothing. You have to write the complete word equation and follow it, and it should be followed by the equation number inside parentheses. Now I will tell you why these parentheses are important in the next slide, and how these are the following examples. Suppose you want to reference two or more equations, then what you do is you have two options. Either you write the word equations completely and then just mention the numbers inside parentheses, or you write equation so and so and equation so and so. Now the importance of parentheses is that uh, we don't only number equations, right? We also number theorems, definitions, and then corollaries or figures, and there are so many things which we actually number. To separate the equations from the numbering of all these other blocks, we write the equation number inside parentheses and the numbers of all those blocks without the parentheses. So the general rules of numbering these blocks are the same, but we should always keep in mind that if we are supposed to number the corollary, then it should be numbered with respect to a particular theorem, because the very definition of corollary is that a result which depends on the previous theorem. So suppose in the example I have written corollaries 4.3.1 and 4.3.2. So in the context of a research article, it would mean that it is the corollary number of section 4, theorem 3, and it is the first corollary. And the second one is the second corollary, of course. Then figures and theorems, definitions, etc. are also numbered in a similar way. Many of us have a habit of writing remarks and notes, but depending on uh, what you feel, they may or may not be numbered. But remember that you should be consistent in numbering and referencing them. Now, what is bibliography and what are, first of all, references? So any published material which have given us some motivation of research, or from which we have taken some idea, or which basically forms a base of our publication, is a reference. Now, there are usually three types of references which we can come across. It could be a research article previously published in some journal. It could be a book from which you have taken some theory, or a website from which you have interacted with someone and got some idea, or a question answer forum or something. And one must always remember that even those articles which have opposite views to us, that means they have proved something and we are trying to disprove them, or the other way around, they can also be our references. There is, there is no enmity when it comes to writing academic documents. Now, what all things should be our references? So first of all, as I have previously mentioned, that anything which has helped us in completing our research is a reference. So it must be included in our bibliography section. And especially that material from where our work is motivated should be included. And self-citation is allowed, which means that suppose you are extending some theory of your own. Suppose you have published a paper and now you have understood that, okay, this could have been done better using so and so result, and now you want to publish this new result, then you can self-cite yourself. That is not a problem. But what many people do is, especially writing thesis, is that just so that the number of references increase, they add all the references of a particular reference inside their bibliography. That should not be done. Only those references which you have used in particular should be written in the bibliography section. Now, how to actually write those references? So first of all, follow consistent style of referencing. So there are various styles. There is a MLA style and the Chicago style and etc. You will find more details on the Google Scholar page. Now, usually all the references follow a particular pattern. The pattern is as follows. First of all, you write the names of authors, followed by the title of the paper or the book. then the journal, name of the journal or the name of the publisher, then the volume of the journal or the book, the number of the journal. So notice that not all journals have numbers. So it depends on what journal you are referring to. And then the pages inside the journal where that particular research article is printed and the year of publication. All these things should be mentioned while referencing. All these references should be arranged in an alphabetical order depending on the last name of the first author. And if the first author is the same, then you can use the same algorithm for the second author. If the second author is the same, use it for third author and so on. And suppose that all the authors are same for a particular publication, then we sort the publications according to the year of publication, because you cannot really sort it according to the journal, because then you know the ego of the publishers might be hurt. So it is better to sort according to the year of publication. Now, if the year is also the same, then it does not matter in what order you write. And it is not required to write the DOI of the particular article or the URL of a website from where you got the article. If your reference is in the following form, which I have written above, it is all right if you don't mention the DOI or URL. Now, not all websites are to be cited using URL alone. There are certain websites such as the Stack Exchange or even some self-made websites which have certain specific citation rules. You can find those rules at the end of the website, usually in the right-hand corner. If you click on that, then a page pops up which tells you how to cite this particular website. You have to use those particular citation rules to cite it. And in case where these rules are mentioned, just remember not to only give the URL of the website. Now, how to cite those references inside our document? So first of all, if you are using suppose 27 or 30 references, not all of them need to be cited. Not everything from these 30 references you are writing again. Some references are such that you have just overviewed it, you have seen what those people have done, and then you have got some idea. So no need to write in square brackets inside the document that so and so has been used. But whenever a result is used from another article, that citation is very, very important. Immediately after the result, or just before writing the result, you have to cite it that the following result has been taken from so and so paper, and the proof can be found there. Then what we usually do is the whatever work we are doing, we cite the previous important works in the same field inside our introduction, so that the reader has a brief idea that what all things have been done inside the field. So this is a example of writing references. So these are all the references I have used to make this PPT. So just notice that all these authors, so these two are websites. So what I have done is I have written the author as the particular university which has published the following article and the article name, followed by the website where I found it, even in the last reference. While the first two were actually research papers, or the second one was actually lecture notes. So it has the author name, the article title, the journal, its volume, its number, the page numbers inside the journal where I can find this research paper, and the year of publication. The second thing, however, was a lecture note kind of thing, and therefore I really cannot have the journal and volume and etc. So the publisher in this case is the university in which this particular professor works. That is the University of Leeds. So I have written this in place of the publisher. So this is all about writing academic documents.